Hi, everybody. MJ Kidman here, and this is the second time we get to meet this week number 10. Now we get to talk about June birthstone Alexandrite as part of our double header week. This is such an interesting stone because it doesn't have the history that a lot of the other stones we've talked about have. It was found recently, and it is so unusual in that it glows different colors depending on the light. We'll talk more about that. Alexandrite's an extremely rare yet relatively modern stone. Major Alexandrite deposits were first discovered in 1830 in Russia's Ural Mountains. Now, the legend has it that the miners were looking for emeralds, and they found this particular gem. They saw that it was shining kind of a teal green color. They took it back to camp, and when they started looking at it by the firelight, it glowed a reddish purple color, and they were confused. And they realized then that they had found a completely new species of gemstone. The gem was named after the young Tsar Alexander II. He was heir apparent to the throne. Because the gem was so popular, the deposits in the Ural Mountains were depleted, and the gem was thought to be going extinct, particularly because George Kunz of Tiffany Company popularized the gem in the 20th century in their jewelry. He fell in love with the gem and traveled to Russia in search of as much of it as he could buy. No one knows exactly how much of the gemstone he bought, but Tiffany had reserves so large that it cornered the market on the stone for decades. And here's a picture of George Kunz, the famed jeweler of Tiffany and Company. For much of the 20th century, there were no new discoveries of the mineral, and it became very rare. But in 1987, new deposits were found in Brazil, and again in 1993 along the border of Tanzania and Mozambique. We've also talked about Tanzania and Mozambique in previous lessons. Tanzania is where tanzanite comes from, and Mozambique is where they found that deposit of spectacular purple garnets. Alexandrite, with its chameleon-like qualities, is a rare variety of the mineral chrysoberyl. And here's where it gets interesting. Due to its complex way of absorbing color, the stone can be a lovely teal green in daylight or fluorescent light and change to a brownish or purplish red in incandescent light from either a lamp or a candle or a fire. Alexandrite's dramatic color change is sometimes described as emerald by day and ruby by night, and the unique color change is attributed to slight impurities of the element chromium. Now, the Alexandrites are prized for how dramatically their color changes. If it goes from, for example, in this image, from a beautiful teal to a deep fuchsia purple, it is more highly prized than one that doesn't have quite the dramatic change. Here's a fabulous gemstone. This is the Whitney Alexandrite. This is one gemstone photographed under two different light sources. It's one of the world's most famous Alexandrite gems, and it's part of our national gem collection at the Smithsonian. In 2009, it was a gift from Smithsonian benefactor Coralyn Whitney. It's a beautiful modified cushion cut, and it exhibits a raspberry color under incandescent light and a teal blue in daylight. This is particularly rare because specimens of larger than 2 carats are considered rare, and those weighing more than 5 carats are extremely rare. This stone itself is 17.08 carats. And as the research showed, it's virtually unheard of. So imagine seeing this in the British Museum. This is a 43 carat Alexandrite. Isn't that stunning? So let's talk about the cut of the Alexandrite birthstone pattern. The French cut diamond is generally reported to be one of the oldest diamond cuts to have appeared around the early 1400s. So I just realized I've paired a relatively modern gemstone with a very old cut. It regained popularity in the 1800s and then again in the 1920s during the Art Deco period. It's a very simple cut with a total of 9 crown facets, and you can see those facets here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the table facet makes 9. Here's the birthstone pattern for Alexandrite. You can see that we have 2 edge to edge lines, separating them into section 1, section 5 up at the top, and in the middle, we actually have them segmented into 3 sections. It's in section number 3 where we find our set-in seams. You can see there are no straight lines edge to edge in section 3. There are these wonderful bends in the middle of section 3. So what we'll end up doing is sewing 3-1 and 3-2 and this little constellation of facets together. Then we'll sew 3-7, 3-8, and 3-9 together into a unit, and then this side into a unit. We will, once we have all of our 3 units together, we will put these 2 together and we will sew this middle section first. We'll pivot and align these 2 pieces together on this line, and then we'll pivot again and sew these 2 units on this line. And then once we've got this unit together, we'll do the very same thing on the other side. And here's our gemstone. As you can see, I used a blue for the June Alexandrite block that isn't exactly the right color for an Alexandrite. Had I known a little bit more about the stone, I probably would have assigned it more of a teal color or maybe more of a raspberry color. So that's what I'm going to do with my block that I'm going to sew this week. I'm actually going to use some raspberry colors from my stash and actually intersperse it with a little bit of dark teal and a bright teal. So we'll see how that turns out. Welcome to part 2 of our double header week, where we have both the emerald and the Alexandrite. Now, both gems have a little bit different construction for their seams. The emerald cut had some set-in seams, 2 of them to be exact, and the Alexandrite has what I call angled seams. That is the special challenge for this week for Alexandrite. Let me show you what I mean. Whereas the emerald did not have any through lines, the Alexandrite definitely has 2 beautiful through lines, edge to edge lines that's going to separate the gem into several sections. Here's section 1, here's section 5, and then the center section, we have additional through lines that separated into 3 areas. And in the gemstone that inspired it, which unfortunately I can't find in my photos and am unable to share with you, I loved this gentle angle. It added so much more movement and energy, and I think it really speaks to the way this gemstone throws light and bends light. So while we work on this Alexandrite, I'm specifically going to create this center piece for our video and show you how I would put this group of facets together. Essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3-1, 3-2, and this little constellation of facets together. Then I will set that aside and put 3-7, 3-8, and 3-9 together. I will set that aside. I'll put this little constellation of facets together with 3-14 and 3-15. Then I'll take this unit and attach it to this unit. I will start by sewing this center line and then pivoting and sewing from this point internally to the edge of the block, flip it over, sew from here all the way down. And then once I have this unit together, I will go ahead and attach this group of facets in the same manner. Well, let's talk about color. As I mentioned before, my Alexandrite, I think, is a little too blue for a true Alexandrite. And if I had been doing this again, I would have made that a little bit different color, maybe a little bit more teal, maybe even the raspberry color. But as it stands, we have 6 fabrics we need to choose from, and therefore you're going to need 6 business size envelopes. But you know what I think I'm going to do? I think, again, I'm going to make this gemstone my own and maybe correct some past mistakes regarding the selection of fabrics and go into my stash and see what I've got. So here's what I found. I found some fun teals, a nice dark teal, a medium, more of an azure blue, and then a light blue. But I need 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All I have is 5 of the teal. Then I went into my other drawers of my stash and I found raspberry colors. And here I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I could either do this color or I could do this color with maybe add a white to round out that 6th piece. But again, I don't think I want my Alexandrite to be too bright. I think I'm going to remove the white and put a little bit darker tone there, a little bit darker value there, because I think I want this to just be a little bit more mysterious, not quite so light. So again, I'm going to take white out. I'm going to replace that with more of a very light value of a color. I want it to look like an Alexandrite by firelight, by candlelight. But what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to, in certain places, drop this tone in alongside this one. So I think I'm going to have two colors for this particular color code. And I may just drop it in sort of strategic places around the edges. Again, to pay tribute to the chameleon-like nature of our Alexandrite. Okay, and so I think I'm also going to use this dark along with this dark. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values of fabric. But for this code, I'm going to have 2 selections, and this code, I'm going to have 2 selections. So let me go ahead and create a color key to show you what I mean. So here's my color key. I took the colors from the page 2 of our Alexandrite chart, starts with a W for white and goes through B1, the palest blue, all the way to B5. Instead of white, I wanted to have more of a light lavender color. So I have changed the W to a light lavender, and then I have moved all the way through to from a lighter to a darker value in my lavenders, my little pinkish lavenders. But then I've added for B4 and B5, the teals as well. And I might just do a little bit of planning on where I'm going to put these colors in my design. I'm thinking it might be closer up to this top. I'm not sure, but I guess we'll find out. So let's go ahead and highlight our chart and cutting out our freezer paper. And again, we're doing this so we know which edges to place on the straight of grain, because any edge that's on the edge of your block or on the edge of the line between your sections is susceptible for warping and twisting. And we want to put that on the straight of grain to help prevent as much of that as possible. I'm going to go ahead and cut mine out with the rotary cutter. But again, as I'm doing so, I'm just going to be really careful when I cut these center pieces to make sure that I honor those lines and that nice curve. Okay, here we go. For this, I think I'm going to use a smaller ruler. I'm going to place my rotary cutter right at the edge and take a little snippet. I'm going to place here and meet very carefully and do another one. There we go. As you can see, I've laid out my facets for section 3 in the piece plan. Those facets that I'm going to sew together are kind of shoved up next to each other with daylight in between. This is just another visual clue that allows me to reach for the correct facets to sew together as I'm trucking along. So let me go ahead and start with 3-1 and 3-2, because this seam and this seam will be the gentle set-in seams, the angled seams. I'm going to start sewing from just this tip of the freezer paper all the way down to the edge here. I'm going to leave this area unstitched so I can more easily set in these pieces. So let me go ahead and peek, pinch, and pin. Okay. There are my hash marks. Corners line up. Good. All right. Now, because this is white, I can actually see that corner. So I will start stitching here and all the way down to the very edge. I can go all the way to the edge here because this is not a set-in seam. This is just a regular seam on the right-hand side. So let me drop in a pin. All right, I'll be right back. And here we have it. I dropped my needle right at the edge of the freezer paper, took a couple of lock stitches, and then stitched all the way to the end. And there she is. All right, got it stuck just a little bit. Just pull that. Good deal. All right, let's keep going. I've just picked up 3/7 and 3/8 from the center. And because they have an angled seam on both sides of them, I'm going to start stitching a 1/4 inch in from the edge, stitch down and stop a 1/4 inch from the edge so that I can set in this side and that side. Now I'm going to sew this unit together with this unit, and I'm going to sew this middle part first. So I'm going to put them together, line up these hash marks, and start sewing from here to there. So I'm going to line up the hash marks and start sewing from here all the way over to there. I've also ironed the seams so that they nest. Both the seams are ironed out towards the outer facets on this side, and they are ironed towards the center on this side, which allows them to nest beautifully. Now, again, I'm going to keep these seams out of the way of my stitch. So even though this seam is pointing inward, I am going to hold it out during my stitching so that it doesn't get caught in my needle. That will help with the set-in seam. I've stitched the middle portion, and now I'm going to, there we go. All right, now I'm going to gently swivel this to align this corner. Okay, I'm going to swivel it and align the hash marks, align the corner, put a pin in it, and then sew from here all the way to the edge. Okay, there we go. Perfect. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and swivel this in that direction to line up that area. Keep these little seam allowances out of the way of your needle. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to start from here and go there. Here we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this unit together and then set it in to the main body. Going to pivot, align the hash marks, there we go. All right, I'm going to start from here all the way down that way. All right, so now I'm going to, that taken care of, now I'm going to pull this down and align this seam, but because I like sewing from here down to here, I'm going to flip it over. Okay, let's align the hash marks. There we go. Align the corners. Good deal. Okay, so from here all the way down. And here we have our set-in seams. Very gentle angled curves. Not a big deal at all. You can do this. I'm going to keep sewing throughout the week and we'll update you with my progress on Facebook. I hope you do the same. Shine on.